The wind howled across the frozen wasteland, carrying the sound of broken metal and distant thunder. Ethan trudged through the ruins of an old alien city, his breath turning to mist inside his cracked helmet. Snow fell endlessly, covering the wreckage of war that stretched as far as the eye could see. He had been searching for survivors, but deep down, he knew this world was silent now. Nothing lived here anymore, or so he thought. Then, through the blizzard, he heard it. A sound so faint it could have been the wind, but it wasn't. It was a cry, soft, trembling, full of fear. He stopped, scanning the shadows between the ruins. The sound came again, closer this time. He followed it, his boots crunching over the frozen ground, his rifle held tight in his hands. Behind the half-buried remains of a crashed transport, he saw movement. Something small, curled up beneath a piece of metal, shaking violently. He approached carefully, lowering his weapon. And there she was, a little alien girl, maybe 7 or 8 years old. Her skin shimmered faintly under the snowlight, a pale violet hue, her silver hair tangled and wet. Her eyes glowed softly like twin stars, filled with terror and exhaustion. She was barefoot, dressed in torn fabric not meant for this kind of cold. Her lips moved, whispering something he couldn't understand. Ethan dropped to his knees beside her, removing his coat without thinking. He wrapped it around her tiny body, tucking it close to block the wind. Her skin felt ice cold, too cold. He rubbed her hands between his palms, trying to warm her. "It's okay," he said softly. "You're safe now." She blinked at him, confused but calm, as if the warmth of his voice alone brought her back from the edge. When she spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. "Mother," she said, and then her eyes rolled back as she fainted in his arms. For a moment, Ethan just stared at her, unsure what to do. He had seen many things during this war. Monsters, machines, even alien royalty, but never a child left alone in such a place. He lifted her gently, her head resting against his chest. Through the storm, he spotted the remains of an old structure. Maybe a shelter, maybe nothing. Either way, it was their only chance. Inside, he found a half-intact room, walls cracked but strong enough to block the wind. He set her down and started a small fire using his emergency kit. The orange glow filled the dark room, flickering over broken walls and strange alien symbols carved in the metal. She lay still beside the fire, breathing weakly, the coat wrapped tight around her small frame. Ethan watched her carefully, noticing the pendant around her neck, a circular piece of crystal with a strange royal insignia etched into it. He frowned, touching it gently. He had seen that mark before, in classified reports. It was the emblem of a galactic house, one belonging to someone powerful, someone dangerous. But why would a child from that house be here, alone, freezing to death? He leaned back, exhausted, staring into the flames. Outside, the storm raged on, the howling wind hiding the sound of something else, a distant hum, mechanical and cold. Up in the sky, beyond the storm clouds, an orbiting ship adjusted its scanners, locking onto a faint life signal. They had found her. Ethan didn't know it yet, but the girl he held in his coat wasn't just a lost child. She was the daughter of the most feared ruler in the galaxy, a being whose command could erase planets. And now, because of a simple act of kindness, Ethan had just placed himself in the path of something far greater than war. The fire flickered, and the girl stirred slightly, whispering in her sleep. Ethan leaned closer, hearing her soft voice. "They will come," she murmured. "They always come." Then silence. Outside, the snow kept falling, quiet, endless, and full of secrets. The morning came with a pale blue light spreading across the frozen ruins. Ethan sat near the small fire, his eyes heavy but alert. The girl was still asleep, wrapped in his coat, her silver hair glowing faintly in the light of the flames. Her breathing was steady now, slow and peaceful. He stared at the strange pendant hanging around her neck, turning it over in his fingers. The crystal shimmered with faint energy, forming symbols that shifted like living light. He didn't understand the language, but he recognized the emblem carved into the metal frame around it. He had seen it years ago, during the first days of the war. It belonged to the Empress of the Dark Systems, the most feared name in every soldier's memory. He whispered to himself, "What are you doing here, little one?" The girl moved, her eyes opening slowly, bright blue mixed with silver. She looked around, confused but calm. "Where's my mother?" she asked softly, her voice trembling. Ethan hesitated, unsure how to answer. He smiled faintly and said, "We'll find her, don't worry." Her small hand reached for his arm, as if searching for trust. Then she closed her eyes again, whispering the same word. "Mother." Outside, the wind had stopped, but the silence felt wrong. Too quiet, too still. Ethan's wrist communicator blinked with a weak signal, static filling the air. He tried to contact his base, but only one phrase repeated on the broken channel. "Unauthorized energy reading detected." He turned the signal off, uneasy. Something else was searching too. He packed his gear quickly, wrapped the girl again, and carried her outside. The cold hit like knives, but he kept moving toward the old relay tower he had seen the night before. If he could reach it, maybe he could send a message for help. The snow crunched beneath his boots as he climbed over a broken walkway. The girl stirred in his arms and pointed toward the horizon. "There," she said softly. "That's where the light came from." Ethan followed her gaze. A faint column of smoke rose far away. It could be survivors, or it could be something worse. Halfway across the open plain, his scanner beeped. Multiple life forms detected, closing fast. He dropped behind a fallen structure, lowering the girl to the ground. Through the broken metal, he saw dark figures moving across the snow. Tall, armored, with glowing red visors, mercenaries. Not soldiers, not rescuers. They were hunting. Ethan whispered, "Stay quiet, don't move." The girl nodded, her eyes wide with fear. He took his rifle and moved into position, his breath steady, his pulse slow. The mercenaries spread out, scanning the area. One of them stopped near the wreckage where they hid. Ethan waited until the red glow of the visor turned away, then fired. The shot tore through the quiet like thunder. The first mercenary dropped instantly. The others shouted, their voices mechanical. "Target found. Recover the asset alive, kill the human." Ethan moved fast, firing, rolling, using the ruins as cover. The girl crouched behind a wall, clutching her pendant, tears freezing on her cheeks. One of the mercenaries threw a plasma charge. The explosion lit up the sky. The blast knocked Ethan down, his armor cracked, pain shot through his side. But he didn't stop. He rose again, firing until his rifle clicked empty. The last mercenary lunged at him, blade raised high. Before it struck, a burst of light flashed behind the alien's head. The girl screamed. The energy from her pendant exploded outward like a wave. The mercenary was thrown backward, armor melting in the snow. Silence fell again. Ethan stared at her, stunned. Her small hands were glowing, her eyes brighter than before. The snow around her turned to steam. She looked at him with tears and fear, whispering, "I didn't mean to." He knelt beside her, holding her close. "It's okay," he said. "You're safe, I promise." Then, faintly, above them, a metallic hum began to echo. Ethan looked up. High in the clouds, red lights moved in formation. A voice whispered through the static of his calm link, deep and cold. "Human soldier, return the child, and your world will not suffer." The girl clung tighter to him, her body trembling. He shut off the communicator and whispered to himself, "What have I gotten into?" As they hid beneath the snow-covered ruins, the girl's pendant pulsed again, faintly lighting the walls around them. For a moment, Ethan thought he saw images, cities, battles, and a tall alien woman with eyes like stars. He realized then that the child in his arms was not a random survivor. She was the daughter of the Empress, and every force in the galaxy was now hunting them both. Outside, the storm returned, roaring through the ruins. Ethan pulled her closer, wrapping the coat tighter. He whispered, "We'll find your mother, I promise." But deep down, he knew her mother might already be looking for them. The sky had turned a darker shade of gray, heavy clouds rolling across the frozen horizon. Ethan moved through the ruins carefully, every step slow and silent. The girl was wrapped in his coat, her head resting against his shoulder. She had fallen asleep again, but her body trembled as if haunted by dreams. The faint hum of engines echoed somewhere above, growing louder with every second. He found an underground passage hidden beneath broken tiles. The entrance was narrow, half buried by snow and rubble. He slid down with the girl in his arms, landing inside a cold metallic tunnel lit by flickering blue lights. It seemed to lead deep into the remains of an ancient facility. "Looks safe for now," he whispered, though he didn't believe his own words. Ethan set her down gently and checked his scanner. Multiple signals flickered around the city perimeter, a hunting grid. Whoever was after them was organized and patient. He knew they wouldn't stop until they had the girl. She woke slowly, her glowing eyes opening in the dim light. "Are they gone?" she asked, voice trembling. "Not yet," he said, "but they won't find us easily." She nodded, clutching the pendant at her neck as if it gave her courage. For a moment, silence filled the tunnel, until a low vibration shook the ground. The old metal walls trembled as footsteps echoed from above, heavy and sharp. Ethan turned off his wrist light and pulled her close. Through the cracks in the ceiling, he saw shadows moving. There were at least 5 of them, armored, scanning with bright red lenses. Mercenaries again, but these ones moved like machines, faster, colder. He could hear their distorted voices through comms. "Asset located in Sector 7, heat trail confirmed." Ethan's pulse quickened. He picked up his weapon, whispering, "Stay behind me, no matter what happens." She nodded, hiding behind a console as he crept toward the entrance. The hunters were closing in, their scanners flashing in the snow. Ethan waited for the first one to pass the broken hatch before he struck. One clean shot. The alien dropped instantly, a burst of light scattering across the snow. But the others opened fire, their energy bolts cutting through the cold air like burning rain. He dove for cover, pulling the girl down with him. The tunnel erupted in sound and light, smoke filling the narrow space. "Move, move," he shouted, carrying her deeper into the tunnels. Behind them, explosions followed like thunderclaps, shaking the walls. The girl's pendant began to glow again, bright, pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. Ethan noticed and shouted, "What's happening?" She looked terrified, tears in her eyes. "It's calling to her." "Who?" he asked. "My mother," she whispered. "She's coming." The air grew heavy, charged with strange energy. Even the mercenaries above hesitated, looking at the sky. Ethan and the girl reached a chamber filled with old machinery. He set her down and tried to contact command again. The signal connected for only a moment before a deep voice answered. "Human soldier, you are harboring the child of the Empress. Surrender her." Ethan froze. The voice continued, "Your people started this war. Do not make the same mistake twice." Then silence. The girl grabbed his hand. "Please don't leave me," she said, her voice breaking. He looked at her, small, fragile, but with a light that felt older than time. "I won't," he said firmly. "Not now, not ever." He raised his weapon again, hearing the sound of metal boots echoing through the tunnel entrance. The mercenaries had found them. Blasts of red light filled the corridor, scorching walls and scattering debris. Ethan returned fire, moving with desperate precision. Every shot counted, every breath louder than the next. The girl screamed, her pendant flashing like a star about to explode. A wave of pure energy surged through the tunnel. The mercenaries were thrown back like leaves in a storm, their weapons shattering. For a brief second, the entire world turned white. When the light faded, everything was silent again. Ethan looked around. The tunnel walls were cracked, smoke rising from melted metal. The girl lay in his arms, unconscious. Her pendant dim now, flickering weakly like a dying ember. Ethan held her tightly, his heart pounding. He could still hear faint voices on his comm, command signals from the enemy fleet. "She's alive," one voice said. "The mother has been alerted." Ethan's blood ran cold. He stared upward, through the cracks in the ceiling, and saw a strange light piercing the clouds. A vast shadow descending slowly from orbit. Something enormous, ancient, and alive. He whispered to himself, "She's here." And in that single moment, Ethan realized the truth. The woman coming for the child was not a monster, not a legend. She was a mother, and nothing in the galaxy would stand in her way. The snow above began to fall again, but this time it glowed faintly blue. The storm had changed, and so had everything else. The storm outside had quieted, but the air was thick with tension. Ethan crouched beside the unconscious girl, her breathing shallow, her small hands cold against his armor. The energy burst from her pendant had burned half his equipment, leaving him half blind to the world above. Still, he could feel it, a strange vibration under the ground, a hum that wasn't from machines but something alive. He checked the comm link again, trying to patch into any signal. Static filled the channel until a soft tone replaced it. Then a voice came through, not human, not mechanical, but calm and powerful. "Human soldier, your kindness has been recorded," the voice said. "Return the child, and no harm will come to your world." Ethan froze, staring at the small speaker on his wrist. The tone was smooth, commanding, almost gentle, yet every word carried the weight of an empire. He didn't need confirmation. He knew it was her, the Empress herself. He looked at the girl, still pale, still fragile. Her pendant pulsed faintly with each breath, like it was answering the voice. "Why did you leave her here?" Ethan whispered. "She could have died." The voice replied as if it heard his question. "She ran from me," it said quietly. "She wanted to see the world you protect, the humans you fight for." Ethan swallowed hard. "And now your hunters are killing to find her." Silence followed. "And then, they disobeyed me. They fear her power." Ethan leaned against the cold wall, his mind racing. He had fought in wars where mercy was weakness, where orders mattered more than hearts. But this was different. The galaxy's most feared ruler sounded broken. "I can't give her to you," Ethan said finally, his voice trembling. "She's just a child." The voice changed, filled with sorrow. "She is my child, human, and I am dying." For a moment, Ethan said nothing. He looked at the pendant, now glowing brighter, as if the Empress's words had awoken something deep within it. He realized then, the energy wasn't just a weapon, it was a bond, a connection between mother and daughter across the stars. "She's scared of you," he said softly. "She said they always come." "I sent no hunters," the Empress whispered. "Others seek her, those who wish to control her power." The signal crackled, fading. "Protect her, and I will find you." Then silence. Ethan lowered his wrist slowly, his heart pounding. The child stirred and opened her eyes, blinking at him weakly. "You talked to her, didn't you?" she whispered. He nodded. "She said she's coming." Tears filled her eyes. "She's not like they say she's kind. She just doesn't know how to love anymore." Ethan didn't know what to say. He simply nodded, brushing the snow from her hair. The ground shook suddenly, dust falling from the tunnel ceiling. A thunderous roar echoed from above. Engines, hundreds of them. Ethan grabbed his gear. "We have to move," he said quickly. He carried her through the tunnels until they emerged onto a wide, icy plain beneath the stormy sky. Above them, glowing ships cut through the clouds like fireflies of war. Two fleets, one marked with the Empress's sigil, the other unknown, closing fast. Blinding flashes lit the sky as the two forces clashed high above the planet. Ethan watched in awe as beams of light crossed the heavens. It wasn't a battle, it was a message, a warning. The child whispered, "They found her." He looked down. "Who?" "The ones who took her throne," she said quietly. "They want me because I can end them." Her words chilled him deeper than the cold wind ever could. She was more than royalty, more than a lost daughter. She was the key to peace or destruction. And now, everyone in the galaxy knew where she was. The communicator blinked again, the Empress's voice softer this time, almost like a whisper from the stars. "Ethan, you must bring her to the old starport." "How do you know my name?" he asked. "Because my daughter told me," the voice replied. "In her dreams." He looked down at the girl, her small hand clutching his armor, her eyes filled with faint light. He nodded to himself, determination replacing fear. "All right," he said quietly, "we'll reach that starport." The wind began to howl again, snow swirling like ghosts around them. He pulled the girl close and stepped forward into the storm. Behind him, the horizon burned with the fire of warring ships. And high above, unseen by either side, a massive shadow watched, silent, patient, waiting for the right moment to descend. Ethan didn't know if he could trust the Empress. He didn't know if her words were mercy or manipulation. But one truth burned in his heart. The child trusted him. And as long as she did, he would fight the entire galaxy to keep her safe. The snowstorm swallowed them both. And somewhere above the clouds, a mother's voice whispered through the stars. "Hold her tight, human, for she carries my heart." The wind screamed like a living thing, tearing across the frozen plain as Ethan pushed forward. Each step felt heavier, his armor stiff from frost, his lungs burning with every breath. The girl clung to him tightly, her small face hidden against his shoulder. Above them, the sky burned with light, fleets battling, ships falling like dying stars. The war of gods played out in silence while two small lives struggled to survive beneath it. He followed the direction the Empress had given, toward the old starport beyond the ridge. But the terrain was brutal, the snow waist-deep, and the storm growing stronger by the minute. He stumbled but never stopped, whispering to the child, "We're almost there, stay with me." She nodded weakly, her breath a faint mist. Her pendant pulsed softly, guiding them through the white chaos like a heartbeat in the dark. Hours passed, or maybe only moments. Time had lost its shape. Ethan's body ached, his fingers numb, but his will refused to break. He saw flashes in the distance, beams from scout drones sweeping the surface, searching. He crouched behind a fallen tower, hiding them both beneath his coat. The drones drifted overhead, mechanical eyes scanning the snow. When they passed, Ethan exhaled slowly. "We're ghosts now," he murmured, "and ghosts don't get caught." The girl stirred, whispering, "They're afraid of her." He frowned. "Who?" "My mother," she said softly. "They fear what she'll do when she finds me." Ethan didn't answer, but he understood. He had seen that kind of fear in soldiers, the kind born not from hatred but awe. As night fell, the storm finally began to fade. In the distance, the shape of the starport appeared through the mist, vast and broken, half buried in ice. Its towers leaned like frozen giants, lights flickering from deep within. Ethan felt a surge of hope, but it died quickly when he saw movement among the ruins. Figures, tall, armored, moving in formation. Mercenaries again, and they were guarding the entrance. He lowered the girl behind a wall. "Stay low, don't move." She nodded, clutching her pendant. Ethan crept forward through the shadows, his rifle heavy but steady. The mercenaries spoke in harsh alien tones, their scanners sweeping across the field. He counted 6, maybe 7, too many for a direct fight. But he had no choice. He aimed carefully and fired once. The first target dropped silently into the snow. The others turned, shouting orders, light bursting through the darkness. Ethan moved fast, using debris as cover, firing between bursts of snow and flame. The battle was quick, brutal, silent except for the wind and the faint hum of dying machines. When the last mercenary fell, the field was quiet again. Smoke drifted upward, disappearing into the storm clouds. He returned to the girl, who stared at him wide-eyed. "You're hurt," she said, seeing the burn marks on his side. He smiled weakly. "I've had worse." She raised her hand, the pendant glowing again. A soft light flowed from her fingers, touching the wound, and the pain vanished. Ethan looked at her in disbelief. "You healed me." She nodded. "Mother says life is a gift. We should never waste it." They entered the starport together, the great hall echoing with the sound of distant engines. Old ships lay scattered like bones, walls covered with frost and forgotten banners. In the center, a single beacon pulsed with blue light, the last working terminal. Ethan approached it, activating the console. A holographic seal appeared, the royal crest of the Empress. Then her voice filled the air again, softer now, weary. "Ethan, my child's protector, you have done what few dared. You chose mercy over fear." He looked up at the glowing image. "If you're real, prove it. Stop this war." The hologram flickered. "That is why she must live." Suddenly, the ground shook, the roof above them cracking. Through the fissure in the ice, Ethan saw a massive ship descending, black and gold, lightning dancing around its hull. The Empress had arrived. The girl ran toward the open platform, crying, "Mother!" Ethan followed, his rifle raised, not in anger but in disbelief. A figure stepped from the ship, tall, radiant, eyes burning like dying suns. The Empress herself. She looked at Ethan, her voice echoing like wind over glass. "You saved what even I could not protect," she said. "For that, no human shall fall by my command again." The child hugged her tightly, whispering something only a mother could hear. The Empress touched Ethan's shoulder, a mark of light forming beneath her hand. "Carry this," she said, "and know that you are under my protection." He bowed his head, unable to speak. For the first time in his life, Ethan saw not an enemy, but a mother who had almost lost everything. The wind softened, the storm fading into silence. Above them, the fleets began to withdraw. The war was not over, but something far greater had begun, understanding. And as the snow fell gently again, the Empress looked toward the horizon and whispered, "You reminded me what compassion feels like." The sky cracked open like glass, thunder rolling through the frozen air. Ethan shielded his eyes as the massive ship descended, its engines shaking the ground beneath his feet. Snow and ash spiraled together, forming a storm of light and shadow. The Empress's flagship, a vessel so large it blocked out the stars, hovered above the ruins of the starport, its hull covered in living gold and black flame. He could barely breathe, the sheer presence of the ship pressing against his chest like a storm. Beside him, the little alien girl looked up, tears streaming down her cheeks. Her pendant glowed, and a beam of soft blue light rose from it, reaching toward the sky. The light touched the great ship, and then the world went still. The engines silenced, the air trembled, and from the center of that golden storm, a figure began to descend. She came down slowly, surrounded by a shimmer that made the air sing. The Empress was taller than any human, her skin like violet crystal, her eyes a swirl of galaxies. Her armor shimmered with 1,000 shifting lights, and yet her face, for all its alien beauty, looked weary. When her feet touched the snow, the wind stopped completely. Ethan felt the weight of her gaze, not cruel, not cold, just impossibly ancient. The girl broke free from his arms and ran forward, crying, "Mother!" The Empress knelt, her arms opening, and for a heartbeat, the war, the fear, the pain, all vanished. She held her daughter close, her voice trembling as she whispered, "I searched every star for you." The child smiled weakly. "I knew you would come." Ethan watched in silence, unsure if he should kneel, salute, or simply vanish. The Empress looked up at him, her glowing eyes softening. "You are human," she said quietly, "and yet you carried my blood across the ice." Ethan nodded slowly. She was alone, scared. I couldn't just leave her. A faint smile touched her lips. "Compassion," she said, "the one weapon we could never forge." Her hand lifted slightly, and the mark she had left on Ethan's shoulder earlier began to glow. "You bear my seal now," she said, "and no one who serves me shall harm you." He bowed his head slightly, unsure how to speak to a being who could destroy planets with a thought. But before he could answer, the sky flashed red again. The sound of engines roared in the distance. Not the Empress's fleet, but another. Dozens of ships appeared from the clouds, their weapons glowing. "Traitors," the Empress whispered, her voice darkening. "They come for my daughter." Ethan grabbed his rifle, standing between the mother and the child. He didn't think, he didn't plan, he just acted. The first barrage hit the ground nearby, shaking the frozen plain, snow erupting in fire. The Empress rose, her eyes blazing with fury and grief. "Stay back," Ethan shouted. "You don't have to destroy them." Her gaze flickered toward him. "You would stand between me and vengeance." "If you do this," he said, voice steady, "then she'll see what they fear, not the mother who came for her, but the monster they created." For a long, frozen moment, the galaxy itself seemed to hold its breath. Then, the Empress lowered her hand. Her voice was a whisper. "Perhaps humanity is not as small as I believed." Her ship responded to her command. A wave of light radiated outward, disabling the attacking vessels without firing a single shot. The air shimmered, and silence returned once more. The girl looked up at her mother, smiling faintly. "You listened," she said softly, "like he said you would." The Empress's eyes softened again. "Your human friend speaks with a courage few possess." Ethan lowered his weapon, the adrenaline still rushing through his veins. "I just didn't want her to see more death," he said quietly. The Empress nodded slowly, her expression unreadable but full of thought. She stepped closer, placing her hand over his heart. "Then you have changed the fate of 2 worlds," she said, "because mercy is the hardest command to obey." A pulse of light flowed from her fingers, and Ethan felt warmth spread through his chest, strength, life, peace. "You will live," she whispered, "to see what your kindness has begun." The clouds above them began to part, revealing a soft aurora stretching across the dark sky. For the first time since the war began, the world below looked calm. The Empress lifted her daughter in her arms and looked back at Ethan. "Thank you, human," she said. "When they speak your name in the stars, they will call you the man who made the Empress weep." The great ship's engines roared to life, golden light rising again into the heavens. Ethan stood alone in the snow, watching them disappear into the clouds. He didn't feel like a hero. He didn't feel powerful. He just felt human, and somehow, that was enough. The sky was quiet again. The storm had passed, leaving only drifting flakes of silver snow that glowed faintly under the rising sun. Ethan stood alone on the frozen plain, the echo of the Empress's voice still in his ears. The warmth from her final touch lingered in his chest. Not pain, not power, but something gentler. Something that reminded him of home. He turned toward the horizon, where the last trails of golden light faded into the clouds. The warships were gone, the battlefield silent. Only silence remained, but it was not the silence of death, it was peace. The wind carried the faint sound of melting ice, as if the planet itself could finally breathe again. Days passed as Ethan repaired his small ship, gathering scraps of fuel and parts from the wrecks. He had no orders, no army, no mission anymore. Only a promise to live. The pendant the girl had left him glowed faintly in his hand, its warmth pulsing like a heartbeat. He often stared at it at night, hearing faint whispers, not of war or command, but of laughter, a child's voice carried through the stars. When the day came for him to leave the frozen world, he looked back one last time. In the distance, the sun broke through the storm clouds, turning the ice fields into rivers of light. He whispered, "Goodbye, little one." Then his ship lifted slowly, rising into the calm blue sky. Years passed. The war that once consumed half the galaxy began to fade from memory. Trade routes reopened, alliances were rebuilt, and the word peace was spoken again without fear. But among the stars, stories still traveled faster than light. Stories of a lone human soldier who carried an alien child through a dying storm. A soldier who faced the Empress of the Dark Systems and made her choose mercy over revenge. They called him by many names. Some said he was a myth, a ghost of the old war. Others swore they had seen him, a man with weary eyes and a strange golden mark glowing faintly beneath his armor. In every spaceport tavern and academy hall, his tale was told in hushed voices. A story not of conquest, but of compassion. A story that began with a coat wrapped around a shivering child. Far across the stars, in the heart of the Empress's golden empire, a great statue stood in a garden of light. It showed a human kneeling, his coat around a small alien girl, her hand resting on his. Below it were words engraved in countless languages. He saw not an enemy, but a child. Every visitor who came there felt a strange warmth, a peace that could not be explained. The Empress often visited that garden alone. She would stand beneath the statue in silence, her eyes reflecting the distant stars. Sometimes she would whisper, "You reminded me what it means to be alive." And the pendant on her daughter's neck would glow softly, the same light Ethan once saw in the snow. On a quiet night many years later, a small freighter passing near the outer colonies picked up a faint distress signal. It was weak, old, buried under cosmic static. But one phrase was clear. "This is Captain Ethan Reeves. Mission complete. She's safe now." The signal faded, but the transmission kept repeating, looping endlessly through deep space like a heartbeat. Pilots said they could sometimes hear it while crossing certain star routes. A whisper carried on the solar winds, not of orders or battles, but of a man's promise that never died. And somewhere in the endless sea of stars, a mother and daughter would pause, look toward that faint pulse of light, and smile. Because they knew, he kept his word. The universe moved on, civilizations rose and fell. But his name remained, written not in stone or command, but in memory. He was the human who saved a child, the soldier who stopped a war, and the man who taught even an empress that mercy could be stronger than fear.